That seems fair to me.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
It's Thursday, time for another Donnybrook. Thanks so much for joining us. Lots to talk about, but first, let's meet our panelists, starting with Randi Naughton, longtime Fox 2 anchor, now the host of More to Say. It's a podcast with Randi Naughton. Thanks, Randi, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we welcome back Andy Banker from Fox 2, reporter, anchor, and the guy who wrangles John Hancock and Mike Kelly on Sunday mornings. Thank you so much.
Hancock and Kelly, yeah. And it's good to be back with my former coworker, Randi.
Oh,
absolutely.
I miss you, Andy.
Reunited, and it feels so good. Joe Holleman's with us from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And, of course, we welcome Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American. Randi, we're going to start with you.
Yes.
Businessmen and women in the city of St. Louis, comprising the group Greater St. Louis, Inc., are asking that about $232 million of the $272 million Rams settlement.
Right.
We sued the Rams. The city got $200.
We won.
Yeah. And now with interest, it's up to $272 million.
Okay.
And now businesses would like to take $232 million of that, and about half will go to North St. Louis. The other half will go to downtown St. Louis for security and enhancements to businesses and buildings, etc. The problem is that the Board of Aldermen had a poll of citizens, and the citizens want that money to go to water mains, fixing the dilapidated water mains in the city of St. Louis. So what do you think is going to happen here?
I don't know what's going to happen, but I think I see both sides, first of all. I see both sides of this issue. That's a lot of money. I personally don't think it's enough. I covered the Rams literally from the time the dome was being built. I wore a hard hat in the building, covering the team as a sports reporter, and then hearing them lie on TV to all of St. Louis about not moving the team out. So do we deserve the money? Yes. Is it enough? No. What do you do with it is the question. The question is, I think the answer is you see who benefits the most from most of that money. And I see the point of giving it to small businesses. And yes, water mains help everybody. So I'm on the fence about that one. I don't know which way they're going to go. I think you got to go with the will of the people.
You're passionately ambivalent about this issue.
Yes, I am.
Yes, okay. Well, you know, and some people say, I think Megan Green, the president of the Board of Aldermen, Alvin, said it should be in some sort of trust so we'll live off the interest forever.
Well, some of it should be. I am a reserve person. I think you should always have a reserve. I think most of us have, you know, once we were responsible adults, we started saying, like, we should always have some money saved. You never know.
Rainy day fund,
yeah,
right?
So I think there is something to that. I also think that by requesting 232, does it come through all, like Greater St. Louis, Inc. now gets to decide what goes to North St. Louis too? Like, where does the money go to them, and then they decide, yeah, we're going to keep half for downtown, but that half that's going to North St. Louis, how do you decide how that gets spent? I don't like that this one entity wants to take such a vast amount of this money. Now, maybe you ask for a lot, knowing that you only get half of that, and then half of that goes now to North St. Louis. But I'm uncomfortable with, give us the money. I don't care. Okay, you got rich and powerful people downtown. They have needs, security being probably at the top of them, but I don't like that ask.
I have found out over the years that politicians love to ask people, what should we do with this? And then completely ignore that advice when it's not what they wanted to do with it. I think, first of all, the argument is say, well, everybody needs to benefit. Fixing the antiquated water system in St. Louis benefits everybody.
Yeah.
Repaving all the roads benefits everybody. So when we talk about this, let's empower neighborhoods. Let's empower areas. Having good roads and working water system empowers everybody. So when it comes to a fairness factor, everybody's getting water main breaks, north side, south side, everywhere. You see it all the time, where the street's blocked off because they're digging 10 feet down to fix a water main. I think these are the times you're not going to get this money when they looked at during the Slay administration and said, this system needs to almost be replaced. here's a chance to use a big chunk of money to do that. And while it's not sexy, fixing a bunch of water mains and paving a bunch of streets, I do believe it helps the most amount of people in the most areas.
But doesn't this all go back to when the Rams came and when the building was built to get them to come, right? Paying for that building was a regional and statewide enterprise. It wasn't the city of St. Louis fitting the bill for that dome. It was the state of Missouri. It was St. Louis County. Now, St. Louis County got a cut, but it was also the taxpayers who paid extra in hotel tax. So the Franklin County executive feels like he's got a stake in this game. He doesn't get to decide. None of the money's at his fingertips.
Well, yeah.
Right? In the outlying counties, even counties in Illinois, they want something that's going to benefit them. I don't know that the water mains in St. Louis benefit St. Clair County, Madison County, Illinois, or Franklin County and Jefferson County, Missouri, or St. Charles.
I think it does anytime they come into the city of St. Louis. And come here for events. I mean, I think it certainly benefits in that way.
But, you know, Andy, they didn't sue. The county and the city sued the Rams, so they get the largesse.
Well, that's true.
Right.
But the city of St. Louis really wasn't an active participant in the suit. It was attorneys who did it on their behalf. You know, they didn't put any, they really didn't have any stake
But now,
in the game.
I do remember, though, when this all began and they were going to sue, all of the adjoining counties could have joined the lawsuit, and they chose not to. So that's a decision.
There's a point to be made that from a regional perspective, you keep the county's cut, which was also like $200 million or something.
169, but who's counting?
Yeah.
With interest is probably 200.
Yeah.
It's getting up there, right, with the interest. And keep it all together and do something magnificent for the entire St. Louis region. And maybe you put it in St. Louis.
Hey, there's also the people who were polled also wanted that money to go to employees of the city of St. Louis who are underpaid. And how do you then not include them in the lump sum? Hey, Alvin, let's move to Hazelwood, where a resident who was convicted about 20 years ago for a sex crime has been forced in recent years to put up a sign on Halloween that he is not giving out any treats or candies at his residence. Also has to turn off the outdoor lights and stay inside. Not participate. Can't hand out any candy. And that apparently is the law in Missouri for all sex offenders. Well, this guy sued, and John Ross, federal judge, agrees with him that that sign saying, no candy or treats at this residence is unconstitutional. Did you agree with that?
I agree with that totally. And when that was first passed, I felt like no matter how I feel about it, it's that that's just unconstitutional. And I always take it a step farther. Okay, I would like to know where people who have committed domestic violence are. I would like to know the people that committed a gun crime. You know, how about let's start labeling it off so we can see where everybody is. I also said, like, years ago, I said, like, if you had everybody's house lit up like green that had marijuana in the house, we would have passed that law like 20 years ago. But you know, you've picked a crime that is heinous. All right, I get it. But at the same time, that's unconstitutional to pick one, say like, no, you have to put a sign up. And the guy that murdered somebody, all right, does not have to.
Hopefully he's not out. We hope.
He could have, they might be out in 2 years.
Keep
now,
open,
Charlie.
Charlie.
Keep open. People murder people, be out in 2 to 5. Right. I don't know them, but
maybe not 2 to 5, but there are murderers out
sure.
there.
Oh, yeah.
I've
Should they
covered
put a sign in
murderers
their
who
yard?
run for public office and the people didn't know, right? And we sort of exposed that. But this isn't a scarlet letter, you know, to mark you if you got divorced from centuries ago. This is child sex predators. And I know there are all kinds of heinous crimes, but you can't think of one more heinous than this, probably.
And that's where I'm at on this situation. I agree. I agree with Alvin. It does strike me as being possibly unconstitutional. On the other hand, I'm not losing any sleep over it if they do have to put up the signs. I also would hope that parents would tell people, if you go see a house, because one of the requirements that police are supposed to monitor, that they're not supposed to give out candy and they're not supposed to have their lights on. This only has to do with the sign. So what we hope is that parents are going, if you see a house that doesn't, like they did when I was a kid, you knew if the house wasn't under, maybe they were just old crabby people, they didn't give out candy, but you didn't go knock on their door. You know, I mean,
threw an egg at their window. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would never have done that, Andy, never in a million years. But, you know, so I mean, I think that could help alleviate it, but at the end of the day, if it's keeping kids safe, I just don't have that big of a problem with the sign.
I think parents need to do, with sign or not, their due diligence for their own children. Of course, their safety is paramount. So there are national and state sex offender registries that you can look and you can pinpoint your neighborhood. And if you haven't brushed up on who might be living where in your neighborhood, now, as right before kids head out on the streets, might be a good time to do that.
Yeah,
sign or no sign.
As Joe does point out, I mean, what about the Girl Scouts selling cookies? Where's the sign for them? Or for that matter, you know, sometimes kids go door to door selling gift wrap or school supplies or whatever.
More than just Halloween.
Yeah, I don't know if the legislation really makes too much sense when you think about it.
Well, the issue's not dead, though. The Attorney General, I think, is going to take the case.
The Attorney General is going to appeal the decision by the federal court.
Well, of course he is.
I was going to say, there's something new.
Andy Banker.
Daly's going to file an appeal.
A couple weeks ago, we talked about some of the problems with the St. Louis Development Corporation handing out $37 million intended to revitalize North St. Louis. And at that time, we were talking about how some politically connected individuals were getting the money. One guy in Shrewsbury who didn't even live in the city. And then seems like there were some vacant lots overrun by weeds with non-operating phone numbers that were also getting lots of money. This time around, you reported that those who applied for the grants and lost got a consolation prize of $12,500.
Everybody, even the people who were denied the grants.
Even if they were denied for good reason, like they didn't exist.
$12,500, yes. And
They still got the money. And now I'm starting to think, forget this. The city just doesn't have the means for doling out $37 million. How about let's go back to water mains and paving streets?
So, well, the Missouri State Auditor is now reviewing this. It's not an official audit. It's not an official investigation. It's a review. And a state rep in St. Louis, South St. Louis, his name's Steve Butz, he went to the auditor's office, and the auditor said, well, we had a whistleblower. Well, Steve Butz was a whistleblower, and he said, I didn't blow any whistles. I just walked into the office and said, have you been seeing what's on the news about this grant program? $37 million, and some of it comes back to addresses that I've been to the addresses that are just locked up buildings where it doesn't look like anybody's been for quite a while. And they also have unpaid property taxes. And there are other people
them right out of the
who have
gate.
legitimate enterprises, like a man who owns a boxing gym that actively mentors young people, and he wants to expand to do soccer and chess and baseball, bring youth baseball back to the core of the city, and he got denied. He didn't get anything. So I think there is a big cry for some other entity to either take this over or, like you mentioned, go back to square one and start over.
I think that it sort of reminds me of the situation with St. Louis Public Schools. I think at best you can say it's horribly mismanaged. We're negotiating with these people, so we're not going to tell you who they are. We're going to give $37 million away, but we don't want to tell you exactly where it's going. And lo and behold, some of it also people who are politically connected. Big surprise there, and then it comes down to, well, you sent in a grant, you didn't qualify, your effort was not good enough, but here's $12,500, which sounds to me a bit like hush money. Well, here's $12,500, quit complaining.
Don't complain.
So your point about go back to square one and start over, to me, it seems to be the only logical position to have.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. A great young reporter once discovered some political corruption in the fire department at his first paper in Danville, Illinois, and it was about the firefighter testing and who was going to be hired as firefighters. And the city decided to just do it over again. And,
a mulligan.
Yeah, literally, right. And I, was kind of surprised, but no, and that's what should happen here. And not only are we going to do it over again, everybody who applies, application will be online. You can read it. You can see what it's about. Transparency.
Yeah.
And then I think you could do it. Also, reduce the number of people that are getting money. If it was 100 people before, reduce it to 25. You got to have your top 25. And if you're 26, you might have an argument. But if you're 100th and you're in a vacant lot, you ain't got no argument.
And you have back taxes. That should be disqualifying out of the gate.
What about this idea? We had the city had an online, they hired a consultant to do it, to have an online vote on how to spend the Rams money. Remember, that's where they came up with water mains and maybe raises for city employees. why not open this up to the same
That's
kind
a
of
great
thing? You
idea.
could keep it all in a North
So
St.
it's
Louis.
another poll that could be ignored.
Right. Well, and I get your point.
But at least you would think if it gets to that stage, all of these things would be vetted.
I think people have been polled a million times in the city of St. Louis, and the potholes are a big issue, security, schools. Those are the top three ones.
Yep, all of it.
Alvin, I want to ask you about ski masks. Pam Boyd, a member of the Board of Aldermen, floated an idea last week and then retracted it. It said that in the city of St. Louis, like Philadelphia, which passed this last December, you can't wear a ski mask if you're threatening someone or committing a crime. That's an additional crime. But also, you can't wear a ski mask inside public transportation, a school building, or public property without permission of those in charge.
Okay, the public property is where I got a little problem here. Now, if I own a business, I said you cannot come in here with a full ski mask on. It's no, no shirt, no shoes, no service kind of thing. All right, I get that. But I'm just Alvin the Libertarian here tonight. I don't think you can tell people what they can and can't wear when they're in public.
Right.
I just think that that's unconstitutional. I mean, yeah, it's menacing, okay? I get it. But at the same time, you just can't go there.
And I think, and that's where I agree with Alvin. I think the part on the public street is the problem. In a school, I have no problem at all. Schools can set dress codes. And, and I always get tired of people go, well, kids in school should be able to express themselves. Yeah, and then when the next shooting happens in a school, everybody's going to go, what are we doing about this? So, I mean, I believe there can be limits on there that are legal limits. As far as just being out in public with a ski mask on?
No, it's in a public building or a school or public transportation.
Public building, I don't think, no. I just think
I got a problem with that.
That's a lot of public buildings.
Yeah.
I can't
Schools I don't have a problem with.
Now, Andy saw a bunch of guys wearing ski masks in the middle of July.
Right.
Right.
In a restaurant.
Yep.
And I went in there asking a question for my job at Channel 2. I can't remember what it was about, but it was very intimidating, and I could tell even the restaurant owner was intimidated. It was 4 or 5 young men. All you could see was their eyes, and he didn't want to. He would love to have been able to kick them out, but he wasn't about to.
But I think he has the
it felt
right
like
to.
they were running the business.
A private business,
Yeah,
I would think.
I think he already has the
you have
right
the
to say
right to
either
put a
take it
sign
off
up,
or leave.
No masks,
No, right.
no shirt, no shoes, no problem. It's the same idea. And wasn't somebody that said at 7-Eleven did that around Halloween? If you can't wear a Halloween mask inside during certain times of the year,
Been doing
it's
it for
the
years.
same idea. Right. Private businesses, I believe, have the right to do that. Whether they adhere to it is another thing. If I'm the owner and I saw that sitting at my table as well, I'd be scared. It's like,
I think the big problem is if a crime occurs, the person can't be identified.
yes.
I understand. I get that.
And I think there's problems with it, but I think Pam Boyd's bill made a lot more sense than the protest against it.
I hear that. Now, let's
bringing
just say I work in the 7-Eleven, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, or not picking on 7-Eleven, but I'm just there. And somebody walks in there with a ski mask on, and they're coming directly at me at a fast pace, and I let them have
Where's your
about
brain?
6 of them.
Right.
All right. I think I would probably get away with it. Not get away with it. I think they would say, like, you were scared, weren't you? I said, I was horrified, and I just protected myself. So, I mean, I don't want that to happen to anybody, but when it happens, maybe these fools will stop wearing ski masks
And then he
in the
would
middle
just
of
say,
the
it was
summer.
cold outside. We'll take it off when you come inside. It's warm in here.
Joe, let me move on to another topic. Megan Green is the president of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen, and until last spring, she was also an adjunct or part-time professor at Washington University. She taught a course on writing legislation. Then she got involved in the spring protests on campus where tents were erected. There were protests against Boeing. She's accused of letting some of the students or the protesters inside a building with her entry card. Since then, she got suspended, and now she's no longer teaching at Washington University in the Brown School. The school says the reason is because we don't want elected officials to be teaching our classes. And yet, Gary Fetter is a member of the Clayton Board of Aldermen, and he's apparently, not only is he a great guy, I know him personally, but he's an adjunct law professor in the school's law department. So if we want universities to be an exchange of ideas where people can meet and at an institution of higher learning expressed their views. Was this a just punishment for Megan Green?
First of all, I agree that universities should be a place, a melting pot of ideas, a melange, as someone said earlier today. And I think that happens in classrooms all the time. And I think all kinds of ideas, even when I was in school, way back in the old days, when I was in college, ideas were exchanged. This was an outside protest. Now, that's different than saying that the university is saying you can't talk about certain things in a classroom. I have not heard that that's the case. This was a protest. After the protest, Washington University was criticized for their reaction to it. I believe that Megan Green was well within her rights to go to that protest, to state her positions, and afterwards, when she was interviewed about Washington University's reactions, could say whatever she wanted about Washington University, and the First Amendment protects that. I also believe Washington University has a right to decide who they want teaching there. And so I'm not sure what the conflict is here.
I agree. And I agree. That's exactly how I feel. But there is one thing that really spills it over. If she indeed gave access to any building with a key card, you're fired. Okay, look, that didn't have anything to do with anything, because you could have put other people in danger. You could have definitely put property in danger. You're out. So that whole argument ends in her defense when she did that. But I'm with you also that, hey, look, you can have any ideas all you want to. But if I was a professor and for some reason, we had some type of, racial incident like that, and I was just out there just going berserk on Washington University and using terms where they're murderers and they're this and they're that, and they tell me, hey, that's all good, Alvin, but you don't teach here anymore, I would have to just take that and say, all right, I made the sacrifice.
Well, what about the vigorous exchange of ideas?
Where is it being stopped? Where is it being stopped? In a classroom, or where is this being stopped? The vigorous change of ideas.
Well, she was on campus protesting. Now, forget for a moment whether or not she let protesters inside a building. I don't know the facts on that. She's disputing it. But if she was given the heave-ho because she criticized the university, I think that the university should be able to take it. After all, let me put it this way. There was a time at Washington University when one of the fathers of the nuclear bomb, Arthur Holly Compton, was the president of the school. He was also the first general manager here at 9 PBS. And one of the top anti-nukers in the country was Barry Commoner, who was a professor at WashU. And you know how they kind of solved it? They had debates on campus. They met in the campus halls and they exchanged ideas. I think that would have been a better way for WashU to handle this. Say, hey, let's have the biggest town hall meeting ever.
I agree.
And we'll have Megan Green there, and we'll have someone from Boeing over there.
But that's not what happened, is it?
No,
that's what I'm suggesting.
Well,
what would
great
have happened
suggestion.
had she not gone on television and talked about the events of the day, had she not expressed her opinion on the air for all to see, for those who weren't on premise at the thing, would it have been different? Would they have been fine with that?
I think, and I'm not the biggest supporter of Megan Green in many cases, but I think that if she had not protested, she'd still have her job, and so I think firing her has a chilling effect on speech at WashU.
I don't think it was about the protesting. Randi said it. She went on television and criticized her employer and criticized the St. Louis Police Department for being heavy-handed. And by the way, I got to reach back. I think we all owe Joe $5 a piece for getting the word melange out there. But there's that point, and you can't take this out of the context of when it happened and what was going on across the United States of America. We had campus protesters taking over campuses and really turning them into eyesores with human waste, graffiti everywhere. They wouldn't leave. Other campuses across the country had started moving in. We saw what happened with up in New York, was it Columbia University, where they actually took over a building. And you had all of these things going on, and WashU was like, we don't want this. Remember, you work for us. Don't go out there and fan the flames. And there was one more thing, is that it wasn't really about Boeing. It was pro-Palestinian. And you had a giant segment of young Jewish students across the United States, including at Washington University, who were very threatened and very afraid about just walking to their classrooms.
So you're not buying the excuse that she was fired because
No.
They're getting rid of
Like you
all
said.
professors who are elected officials.
Right. The Clayton council member is.
No,
They're not
exactly.
going to get rid of him.
Right.
Well, speaking of free
she's got a
speech,
point there.
what do you think about the Secretary of State in Illinois, Randy? His name is Alexei Janulius, who has banned 5 license plates that have October 7th on it because he finds that those are fighting words and they're hateful.
Well, in pretty much every state, you can apply online with the Secretary of State's website to talk about, I want a personalized license plate, whether it's I love cats or love my mom or hate traffic, whatever it may be. But there are certain objectives you have to follow in every state, including here in Missouri. If the Secretary of State and the people choosing these license plates finds it objectionable in any way, they have a right to decline your application. So, you know, is it subjective to the Secretary of State only, or is it subjective to the committee that is on this license plate committee? So apparently they got together. You know, I've seen license plates with people commemorating 9/11. Why is that different? You know, if there's a Jewish person who is driving with October 7th on their license plate, you know, in homage to those victims who were massacred well over a year ago.
And all
20 seconds.
On Monday, my sister celebrated her birthday. Monday was October the 7th.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, there's somebody out there in the state of Illinois who's got a license plate that commemorates their birthday.
Exactly.
What are they going to do with that?
I know someone whose birthday is November 5th and just celebrated because they didn't want to conflict with the election this year. Hey, let's go to the old mailbag.
Wow.
None of the panelists realized they were participating in racial stereotyping when they suggested reparation dollars to fix up their houses. There are self-supporting African Americans living in the city of St. Louis. That from Patty Smith of Kirkwood. We also heard from Mike Sullivan of West County, who wrote, Dublin Airport has flights that connect to multiple cities in Europe and elsewhere. It's great for travelers to Dublin and Greater Ireland, but it's also an option for those heading elsewhere. Thanks, Mike. You can write us care of 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street. We love those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org, and on social media, use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Call the 9 line at that number and listen to us on your favorite podcast source, wherever that might be. Thanks to Randy Naughton and Andy Banker for joining us this week, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you in 7 days.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.